Take the 5 grand, Liz, or your career's toast. That's the first thing out of Damon Vic's mouth as he slides a cream-colored folder across the cafe table like he's handing me a wedding invite instead of a career execution. Friday morning, 10:12 a.m., and the bastard doesn't even buy me a coffee. He's grinning, some smug, crooked little smile like this is a favor. Like he's doing me a kindness by throwing hush money at me with a cinnamon sprinkle of legalese. No warning, no performance review, no let's work on your goals. Just a sleek NDA, a digital pen, and a threat wrapped in a latte-scented envelope. I don't open it. I just stare at the Mavendale Utilities logo embossed in that stupid italic font and try to stop my left eye from twitching. You'll land on your feet, he adds, voice sugar-coated and snake-coily. But you have to go quietly. The board's nervous. The board's nervous? Right there, something clicks sideways in my skull, because I'm not important enough for the board to be nervous about. I'm a mid-level ops analyst who color-codes spreadsheets and flags billing anomalies. I'm not the C-suite. I'm not even the assistant to someone in the C-suite. Unless I saw something I wasn't supposed to. And that's when I realize I'm not getting fired for underperforming. I'm getting disappeared. Before we go any further, real quick, if this kind of story keeps your blood simmering and your coffee hot, take a second to hit that subscribe button and give us a like. 90% of y'all are lurking uncommitted, and trust me, every tap helps the team keep dropping these justice-fueled office sagas. Thanks for keeping us going. Now back to Damon. He's still talking. Something about industry relationships and graceful exits. I let him run his mouth because I need the audio for memory, like setting a mental camcorder on his stupidity. Look, he says, lowering his voice like we're in on a secret. Sign it this weekend. Walk away clean. But if you fight this, well, let's just say people talk in this field. People talk. That's the threat, subtle as a shovel to the back of the head. I flip the folder open, finally, and scan the top line. Severance agreement, full and final release of claims. $5,000. That's how much my silence is worth to Mavendale Utilities. Clause 4 catches my eye like a jagged nail on silk. Recipient agrees not to disclose any company operations, audits, financials, or correspondences to municipal, state, or regulatory bodies. Oh, hell no. He sees me reading and adds, don't worry, legal's already reviewed it. Translation, we spent a lot of money making sure this paper buries you 6 feet under. I close the folder. What exactly am I being let go for? I ask, keeping my voice as flat as a microwave beep. Restructuring, he lies, blinking too fast. You know how it is, budget flow shifts, organizational priorities, strategic realignment, budget flow shifts? I say just to watch him squirm. His nostrils flare. He wasn't expecting me to press. 'Cause here's the thing. 2 weeks ago, Damon asked me to clean up a set of ledger entries tied to our Northeast Corridor development grants. A boring set of utility budget reallocations that somehow included duplicate vendor IDs, a handful of ghost invoice trails, and one payment entry that looked a lot like someone rounded $82,443 up to $820,000. When I flagged it to him, he said, and I quote, "We'll sort it later. It's all reconciled upstream." I saved the original file to my cloud. Then I dropped a copy on a flash drive. Not because I expected this, but because I've been burned before. 6 years in infrastructure, and the one thing I know better than Excel shortcuts is that the truth always costs more than the lie. Damon leans in now, trying to smell like cologne and authority. You don't want to make this messy, but his voice is tight. Not confident, not anymore. He's sweating. I give him a small, polite smile. The kind of smile women use in parking lots when a man follows them too close. Can I take the weekend to review it? He blinks, caught off guard. Sure, but the offer expires Monday. Of course it does. I tuck the folder under my arm, stand up and nod. I'll be in touch. Then I walk out of that cafe like I'm not on fire inside, like my palms aren't shaking, like I don't already hear my career creaking shut behind me. What he doesn't know is that I showed that exact budget file to someone else 2 weeks ago. Just venting, over spaghetti, over wine. My cousin Jordan, municipal legal counsel for the city of New Arden. And Jordan said something weird at the time, laughing, fork halfway to her mouth. You ever seen Municipal Code Section 12.409? That sucker's toothy. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Now I plan to weaponize it. 2 weeks before the ambush with Latte, I was at my desk wrestling with a spreadsheet that smelled funny. Not literally, but you know when a file reeks of something it shouldn't, like old milk in a new carton? That's how this budget reallocation summary felt, off, bloated, and twitchy in all the wrong places. The spreadsheet came from Damon, flagged urgent Q2 adjustments. It looked standard at first. Utilities expenditures, invoice tracking, standard grant reimbursements from the city's infrastructure expansion program. But something in the cell formulas caught my eye. Duplicate vendor IDs. Same invoice number listed twice with different totals. A subcontractor from Trenton who somehow billed for materials before we even approved the project. One file said $24,000. Another said $124,000. The totals didn't match the signed ledgers from last quarter. And the internal memo included a cheery note. Please scrub by Friday and re-upload for city compliance team. Scrub, not review, not validate, scrub. So I did what any half-sane analyst with an overactive conscience would do. I hit Ctrl+S on the original, saved a fresh copy, and stashed it on my encrypted drive. Then I took a screenshot of the file path, and I emailed myself that screenshot, because this is Mavendale Utilities, not Disney World, and people here don't get fired, they vanish. I walked over to Damon's office with the file open on my laptop, tapped lightly on the glass and peeked in. He looked up from his phone like I'd interrupted his nap. "Hey, just a quick thing on the Q2 reallocations," I said, stepping inside. He blinked. "Yeah, there are some anomalies. I think one of the contractor IDs was duplicated across projects, and 2 invoice totals don't match prior ledgers. Also, the timestamp on that Trenton vendor looks like it predates the purchase order." He waved his hand like he was shooing away a mosquito. "It's fine. Legal signed off upstream. Just clean it for optics and re-upload it. Don't overthink it." I stood there. "But the city might flag this in their quarterly, Elizabeth." He smiled, but his eyes didn't. "Trust me. We've got coverage, not oversight, not compliance. Coverage." I left his office with a stomach full of fishhooks. Went back to my desk and did something I hadn't done in months. I turned off the VPN, pulled out an old USB stick from my desk drawer, the one with the cracked Batman logo, and copied the unedited file onto it. Then I tucked that USB into the zipper pocket of my purse, right between my pepper spray and an expired Rite Aid coupon. That night, I had dinner with Jordan. She was elbows deep in her 3rd glass of Pinot when I mentioned, casually, how tired I was of Damon's crap and how he keeps asking me to scrub grant stuff for city reports, but the numbers feel cooked. Jordan raised one eyebrow. "What kind of cooked?" "I mean, duplicate entries, inconsistent totals, backdated invoices. One vendor's getting triple paid on paper." Least she leaned back. "Municipal grant funds?" I nodded. Jordan blinked slow. "You ever read Section 12.409? I paused. "Of what?" "New Arden Municipal Code. Section 12.409. Covers ethics, oversight, and public-private partnerships. It's got teeth." I laughed. "Teeth?" Jordan sipped. "Big ones. If someone retaliates against a whistleblower in a grant-funded operation, the NDA's void. And the liability? Personal. Civil, sometimes criminal. You get a good lawyer in a bad mood, you could make a career off that clause." I laughed it off. Because at the time, I thought Damon was just lazy. Just a posturing climber trying to make spreadsheets prettier for the audit monkeys downtown. Now, with a $5,000 NDA burning a hole in my bag and a deadline breathing down my neck, I start rereading the file names. The metadata, the fake smiles, the too fast severance. It wasn't optics. It was a cover-up. And now that I know what to look for, I realize something else. The inconsistencies weren't random. They followed a pattern. The vendor IDs weren't just duplicates, they were variations of shell companies. Same address, same service descriptions, just slightly different tax IDs. Enough to slip past a lazy audit. Enough to pump city money into some slush fund operation without tripping red flags. They didn't think I'd notice. I thought I'd just scrub the data, smile politely, and move along. But I know what I saw, and now I know what it means. The summons came via Slack like some dystopian fortune cookie. "Damon Vix, hey, can you swing by HR? Just a quick thing. 10:42 a.m., a quick thing." That's Mavendale code for bring your dignity in a to-go box. I stared at the message for a full minute, watching that blinking cursor mock me like it had front row seats to my funeral. Then I stood up, smoothed down my cardigan, black, the color of corporate grief, and made the quiet walk to HR like I was heading to my own execution. The HR office smelled like off-brand disinfectant and tension. Janine, the HR manager, was already seated in the corner of the small conference room with a blank legal pad in front of her. Not a laptop, not a screen. Just analog silence and the kind of tight smile that says, "I hate this more than you do, but I'm still getting paid." Damon was already there, sitting across from her, legs spread like he owned the building. The same cream-colored folder sat between them, waiting for me like a bad sequel. He didn't even offer me a seat. "This won't take long," he said, folding his hands like some budget Bond villain. "I assume you've had time to review the agreement." I sat down slowly, matching his poker face with one of my own. "I have," I said, "but I have a few questions before we go further." "Of course," he said. "Shoot." "Was legal involved in drafting this version?" His jaw twitched. "Legal has reviewed it," he said quickly. "The language is standard. That's not what I asked, but fine." I leaned back slightly. "There's a clause in here that forbids me from discussing anything related to audits or municipal funds with city officials." He smiled too fast. "Yes, well, we have proprietary workflows. NDA just protects our internal operations. Even the ones tied to public grants." Janine shifted in her seat, suddenly very interested in the edge of her notepad. Damon's smile flattened. "Elizabeth, this isn't a debate, it's an opportunity, a very generous one. You get a clean break, a respectable payout, and no hard feelings. $5,000, that was the price of no hard feelings. I'd like to take the weekend to consider it," I said evenly. He blinked. "Deadline's tight, we're looking to move quickly." I tilted my head just enough to signal try me. Janine finally cleared her throat. That's reasonable. It's standard to allow 72 hours. Damon shot her a glare, but she didn't look up. She just scribbled something on her notepad that probably said, "I'm not going down with this idiot." "Fine," Damon muttered, "but Monday by 10. No extensions." I gave him a polite nod. Understood. And I walked out without the folder this time. I didn't need another copy. I already had a PDF, 10 backup copies, and the clause in question practically tattooed into my memory. That night, I sat in my kitchen with the lights low and my laptop open. I called Jordan on speaker, wine in one hand, the NDA in the other. "Okay," I said. "Remember that code you mentioned? Section 12.409? She perked up immediately. "Yeah, Municipal Ethics Clause. Why?" I read her the exact line from the NDA. The one forbidding disclosure of any information, data, or insight connected to company operations, including but not limited to activities tied to city-funded infrastructure initiatives. There was a long pause. Then Jordan laughed. "Wow," she said. "They really put that in writing?" I didn't laugh. I waited. After a beat, her voice dropped into something colder. "Wait, are they actually asking you to sign that? With the grant money involved?" I didn't answer. She already knew. "Jesus," she whispered. There was silence for a while, just the hum of my fridge and the tiny gulp of her wine glass on the other end of the call. Then she said it. "If they retaliated because of what you flagged, that NDA's already void. Even if I haven't gone to the city yet, it's not about if you did. It's about if they think you might. Retaliation doesn't require action, just perceived threat. Section 12.409 is clear. NDAs can't be used to silence potential whistleblowers connected to municipal funds. Doesn't matter if they wrote it in Comic Sans." I exhaled slowly, letting that settle in my bones. "They're in panic mode," she added. "That clause means if you so much as raise a red flag, the city can freeze funding. And if someone in legal approved that NDA, they are complicit." I finished. "Exactly." My wine glass trembled a little in my hand, not from fear anymore, but from something harder, sharper, like I'd swallowed a bolt. "Do nothing for now," Jordan said. "Let them sweat. I'll draft something, simple, just one sentence, and I'll send it directly to their legal team Monday morning." I looked at the unsigned check still sitting in the envelope on my counter. Still uncashed, still insulting. "Make it sting," I said. Jordan chuckled darkly. "Oh honey, it's got venom." Monday morning came and I didn't bother setting an alarm. I made eggs. I watered the plant on my windowsill that's been half dead since March. I read the news. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up Slack, and marked myself as out personal. Not sick, not vacation. Just out in the most ambiguous, HR-compliant, quietly menacing way possible. Across town, in the beige maze of Mavendale Utilities Legal Department, an inbox pinged at 8:07 a.m. From Jordan Ellis Jellies at Newark and Gov to Legal Department at Mavendale Utilities Com subject. Severance Agreement Mavendale Utilities Body. See Municipal Code Section 12.409. We believe it applies. No greeting, no signature. Just the digital equivalent of sliding a grenade across a table, pulling the pin, and walking away. I was still in my robe when Jordan texted me. Sent. 10 minutes later. Damon Vicks kicked in the door to legal like a man late to his own funeral. The office is open concept, great for synergy, terrible for secrets. Everyone heard him. Who the hell is Jordan Ellis? Cheryl in legal is the kind of woman who alphabetizes her post-its. She doesn't do emotion. But that morning, her voice cracked just a little when she replied, she's municipal counsel. City side. Her office oversees ethics compliance on infrastructure grants. Why is she emailing us? Damon demanded. She's representing someone, Cheryl said slowly, holding up the printed email like it might bite. Who? He snapped. She didn't say. Which is exactly what made him panic, because he knew he just didn't want to say my name out loud, like speaking it might summon me from the shadows, legal daggers drawn. He started pacing. Section 12.409, that's nothing. That's some obscure whistleblower thing, right? It's not. It's not enforceable. Cheryl, who'd pulled out the municipal code binder by now, read aloud the section with the kind of dry dread usually reserved for court stenographers or morticians. In any case where a private entity accepts municipal grant funds, and a current or former employee alleges misuse of said funds, any attempt to silence, intimidate, or terminate said employee via confidentiality agreement shall render said agreement null and void. Additionally, retaliation may constitute personal liability under subsection C. She stopped reading. Damon said nothing. Then, in a voice too low for most to hear, but loud enough for the nearest two paralegals to remember forever, he muttered, "This is a joke, right?" Cheryl didn't blink. No. I imagined the way his face must have looked, some mix of diarrhea and disbelief. I wasn't there, but I felt it through the walls of every cubicle I'd ever been trapped in. That moment when a man realizes he underestimated the quiet girl with the color-coded folders. Back at home, I opened my notes app. Titled the file, Documentation Log Mavendale Incident. 8:07 a.m. email sent by Jordan. 8:16 a.m. Slack ping from Janine in HR. Hey Elizabeth, just checking in. All okay? No reply. 8:28 a.m. Damon citing in legal. Audible yelling reported via text from Ashley, accounting. 8:39 a.m. Unscheduled all-hands meeting canceled. Damon no-show. 8:46 a.m. email from City Comptroller's office lands in Mavendale's shared inbox. I'd get this info later, but I noted the timestamp now because I already knew it was coming. I didn't send a single email that day, didn't call anyone, didn't post on LinkedIn or hit send on the carefully drafted draft I'd written titled Dear Coworkers. Silence was the play. Let them make noise, let them sweat. I was in full documentation mode now. I screenshotted Damon's earlier Slack message summoning me to HR. I archived the urgent Q2 adjustments email with the spreadsheet attachment. I even re-exported the original file with the metadata intact, dates, times, edits, logins, everything, because the storm was no longer coming. It had landed, and I wasn't in the building anymore. I was offshore, legally speaking. Unreachable, untouchable. By 9:10 a.m., a new email pinged Jordan's inbox from Cheryl Hughes Chews at Mavendale Utilities Com to Jellies at Newarton Gov subject. Severance agreement Mavendale Utilities body received. We are reviewing the matter internally and will follow up. Translation, oh God, oh God, oh God. Jordan forwarded it to me with no comment, just a smiling emoji. I replied with a single word, documented. The rest of the day, I read a book, folded some laundry, took a nap, and every so often I imagined Damon staring at that severance agreement like it had just grown fangs and bit him on the throat. The best part? I never raised my voice. I didn't have to. At 9:46 a.m., the City Comptroller's office sent an email with the subject line Routine Audit Confirmation Infrastructure Reimbursement Schedule. No fanfare. No bold red font. Just a quiet little hand grenade, dressed in municipal gray. To the untrained eye, it looked like your average bureaucratic footsie. To anyone who's ever lived through a compliance bloodbath, it was the starter pistol. Attached was a 3-line request for budget ledgers, vendor contracts, and invoice verification for project #NEC 117 Phase Roman 2, one of our flagship infrastructure efforts funded through a tidy $2.3 million grant from the city. Damon had been parading that project around for months like a prize hog at the county fair. What legal didn't know, but what I did, was that NEC 117 was the same project from the Q2 spreadsheet, the one with the duplicate vendor IDs and the mysterious $796,000 reallocation that vanished like a fart in a wind tunnel. By 10:04 a.m., the CFO had forwarded the request to Damon with a vague, "Let me know if anything needs clarification before I loop in legal." Damon's reply came 5 minutes later, all clean on my end. Proceed as usual, all clean, like bleach over blood. Meanwhile, I was still at home, sipping my second cup of coffee and watching the Slack channel updates from my phone. Most of them were small stuff, people confused about the canceled all hands, whispers of a special project audit, HR going suspiciously quiet. But then at 11:12 a.m., someone in finance posted a cryptic note in the procurement channel. Miriam H. Is anyone else getting hold notices on NEC 117 vendor payments? Just tried pushing through disbursement and it bounced back. That's when the panic began leaking through the seams. A hold notice means city funds are frozen. And when city money gets cold, so does the entire operation. No payments, no reimbursements, no bonuses, no hush money. Damon didn't say a word publicly, but Ashley told me he started doing laps around his office like a zoo tiger. His tie was loosened. He was muttering to himself. At one point, he stormed into legal again and demanded to know if the comptroller's office had tipped their hand. Cheryl just said, "We're reviewing," like she was narrating her own resignation letter. He pulled Janine into a meeting around 1 p.m. Closed door. No calendar invite. No minutes taken. That's the kind of meeting you have when you're trying to rewrite history before anyone pulls the timestamp receipts. But here's the thing about timestamps. They don't flinch under pressure. By 3:17 p.m., someone posted anonymously in the general thread, a joke probably, one that landed too close to the truth. Anonymous otter via throwaway. If this is another routine audit, then I'm Santa Claus. Ho ho hold on your vendor payments. It got 17 emoji reacts in under 10 minutes. That's when Damon snapped. Ashley messaged me, he's unraveling, tried to shut down Slack memes and tripped over his own laptop cable. Not even joking. I didn't reply. I didn't like the message. I didn't breathe on it. 'Cause silence was my strategy now. Silence was the knife in the drawer no one saw me sharpen. I hadn't emailed anyone in 48 hours, hadn't posted, hadn't shown my face in a single meeting. And yet, my absence echoed louder than the entire legal department combined. Every missing good morning, every absent Slack reaction, every empty chair at the ops huddle, it all screamed, something is wrong, and she knows. At 4:02 p.m., the CFO forwarded the audit email again, this time with a CC to legal, procurement, and 2 senior project managers. His message was simple, need this handled cleanly. Please coordinate response. But the panic was bleeding through the periods. Handled cleanly? That was CFO speak for we need to find the body before the cops do. Damon finally sent out a message at 4:37 p.m. in the company-wide leadership announcements channel. Damon V, Just a heads up, team, city's doing a quick audit spot check on NEC 117. All standard. Let's stay buttoned up and responsive. Appreciate everyone's focus. It was too smooth, too chirpy, like a pilot saying slight turbulence while the wings are on fire. Someone replied with a thumbs up. Someone else added a popcorn emoji. By the time sunset rolled in, Mavendale's HQ was a stew of quiet dread and fake productivity. Everyone was working, but nobody was working. And I went for a walk. Down the same street where Damon once cornered me outside a staff mixer and told me I had CFO energy, but not quite the wardrobe for it. That same man was now tripping over his own cover story while I, quiet, composed, unbothered, watched the pieces tilt toward collapse. My phone buzzed around 6:10 p.m. A screenshot from Jordan. City Ethics Office had just logged a formal receipt of potential interference with grant compliance. There was no name on the report, no sender, no subject, just a blank header. But I knew the folder structure because I built it. The folder dropped at 8:42 a.m. on Tuesday. No sender, no internal routing, just a shared drive upload marked Compliance Review NE 117 Urgent Zip placed directly into the internal compliance inbox, where only 5 people had access. No message, no cover sheet, just raw files, raw numbers, and raw intent. Inside were 8 spreadsheets. Each was labeled precisely, down to the revision dates, version numbers, and internal tags we used at Mavendale. No outsider would have known our naming conventions. Hell, half the people in procurement couldn't even remember which suffix meant approved versus pending. But the structure? Oh, the structure was unmistakably mine. Tabs labeled master ledger, audit trail, source invoices, vendor matching. Even the font was mine. Calibri 11 PT headers bolded in dark gray, not black, because black made things look combative. Gray whispered, I'm right and polite about it. There was no signature, no author metadata. I made damn sure of that. But every detail sang my rhythm, like a fingerprint written in formula syntax. Compliance cracked it open and went silent for 38 minutes. Then Cheryl from legal knocked on their door, and whatever was left of Damon's illusion shattered into 100 sticky, flailing lies. Because the spreadsheets didn't just expose the cooked invoices, they showed how they were cooked. Cell edit histories, timestamp discrepancies, manual overrides logged at times when vendors weren't even active, approval fields updated by system admins who'd been on vacation. And in one glorious tab called Q2 Reallocation Adjusted, a buried formula showed $796,000 redirected from equipment services to a shell entity with no matching tax ID in the city registry. They had metadata, they had manipulation logs, they had motive, and nowhere was my name. That was the beauty of it. I didn't send the file, I didn't even touch the upload. But I'd made those templates months ago, shared among our internal audit prep team, and Damon had used them, repurposed them, overwritten them. And now, they were damning him with my own organizational elegance. By 10:12 a.m., legal started its own probe. Not out of justice, mind you, but fear. Fear of the city stepping in first. Fear of the ethics office digging deeper. Fear of clawback clauses. Fear of the board. Damon tried to get ahead of it. He pulled Janine and Cheryl into a closed-door clarification meeting and started waving the word miscommunication around like it was a holy shield. She misunderstood her scope, he claimed, voice rising. She's not a compliance officer. She wasn't authorized to dig that deep. Cheryl stared at him like he was vomiting in Latin. She flagged duplicate entries, she said evenly. That's not digging. Damon, that's her job. I'm saying she jumped to conclusions. Interpreted things she didn't fully understand. Did you approve the reallocations? I reviewed them, yes. Did you authorize them? Silence. Outside the conference room, word had already spread. Slack lit up with messages from people using phrases like internal audit and ethics clause in hushed, emoji-laden tones. Nobody was asking about me directly. But in the marketing group chat, someone joked, "At this rate, Elizabeth's gonna come back as CEO." It got 47 reactions. I didn't respond. I didn't even smile because I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't surviving. I was waiting for them to follow the trail they swore didn't exist. Waiting for legal to stumble into the truth like blind mice in a mousetrap showroom. Waiting for Damon to realize that every time he hit approve on a falsified invoice, he wasn't just faking numbers, he was signing his own resignation letter. And now the signatures were being tallied. I made tea, read a paperback, took a walk. At 3:03 p.m., my phone buzzed, a forwarded email from Jordan. From Cheryl Hughes to City Ethics Office at Newark and Gov subject. Informal inquiry Mavendale Utilities body. We'd like to discuss potential preemptive measures to ensure full cooperation in light of recent developments. Translation, please don't send in the feds. Trying to pretend we still have control. I closed the message and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for 6 years. They had the data, they had the clause, and now they had the burden. All I had to do was sit still and let the house burn itself down. The conference room on the 6th floor, usually reserved for investor presentations and holiday cheese platters, had never felt so claustrophobic. At 9:01 a.m. sharp, the leadership team was crammed around the long walnut table, staring down a silent PowerPoint screen. No coffee, no muffins, just dry air, twitchy fingers, and the kind of silence that made your skin feel too tight. Damon sat at the head of the table like a man trying to look taller than his sins. His suit was wrinkled, his tie was askew, and the shine in his eyes had been replaced with a dull, panicked glaze. To his left, Cheryl from Legal sat with a manila folder so thick it could double as a tombstone. To her left sat Miriam from Finance, arms crossed, jaw clenched, as if daring someone to lie in her direction. And on the far end, near the door, was Greg Thompson, board liaison, former prosecutor, and professional harbinger of doom. He was tapping a pen so rhythmically on his notepad it sounded like a death march. "Let's start with the basics," Greg said. Damon cleared his throat. "So, received an inquiry from the comptroller's office." He began, with the cautious tone of someone pretending to read a speeding ticket like it's a love letter. "A routine thing. We're cooperating fully. We believe there's been some confusion regarding procurement records on NEC 117, and stop," Cheryl cut in, eyes narrowed. "Before we get into spin mode, we need to address the municipal clause." She opened the folder. The room leaned forward. "Section 12.409 of New Arden Municipal Code," she began, voice flat but unmistakably final. "Specifically, subsections A through C." Greg stopped tapping his pen. Cheryl read it aloud like a verdict. "Any private entity receiving municipal funds shall not impose any form of confidentiality agreement intended to silence, restrict, or retaliate against current or former employees who raise concerns or report irregularities related to said funds. Any severance or non-disclosure agreement in violation of this code is considered null and void. Retaliation may result in personal liability for all approving officers." She shut the folder with a soft thwack. "Silence." Damon coughed once. That's overreaching. That clause hasn't been tested in court. It's barely ever cited." "Doesn't need to be cited," Greg said coldly. "It just needs to exist." "But the NDA was standard. You mean the one you shoved across the table with a veiled threat and a smile?" Cheryl asked. "The one that explicitly forbids disclosure to regulatory bodies. The one attached to a $5,000 severance for a 6-year analyst in good standing with no prior warnings?" Damon's mouth opened, closed, opened again. And then, barely above a whisper, "This is a joke, right?" Cheryl didn't blink. "No." Greg leaned forward, hands clasped. "We've already been contacted by the mayor's office," he said calmly. "They've confirmed that a formal review is in motion. They didn't say who initiated it, but the ethics office has acknowledged that Municipal Code Section 12.409 is now active, which means the NDA is void, which means she's protected. Which means you," he pointed his pen like a dagger, "are now on record as having attempted a silencing maneuver that could open us to civil, financial, and reputational liability." Damon looked like he'd just remembered the oven was on and his house was made of paper. "It wasn't like that," he said. "She wasn't even supposed to have access to those files. She was overstepping. She misunderstood her role." Miriam finally spoke. "Did she fabricate anything?" "What? Did she fake the data? Alter the files? Forge any invoices?" "No." "But then shut up," she said, "because what you're describing isn't overstepping. It's auditing, and it's what she was hired to do." Greg turned back to Cheryl. "Where are we on internal containment?" "We've begun our own review," she said. "Not because we want to, because we have to. If we don't hand over clean documentation to the city by Friday, they're authorized to freeze all pending grant reimbursements. Not just NEC 117, all of them." Greg nodded grimly. "We'll need to prepare a board statement." Damon shook his head, muttering, "She set us up." Cheryl didn't even dignify it. "No," she said, "she did her job. You just didn't think she had teeth." The room sat still, every executive suddenly very interested in the pattern of the carpet. Greg's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, then stood. "Mayor's liaison will be calling in 20, he said. "Prepare something neutral. No admissions yet, but don't lie. For God's sake, don't spin." He walked out without another word. Damon finally slumped back into his chair, the last inch of his authority crumbling off his shoulders like ash. He looked around the room like a drowning man trying to find a lifeguard in a swimming pool full of lawyers. But no one looked back. Because at that moment, it became undeniably, irreversibly clear. He wasn't the one holding the cards anymore. He was the card. And the deck had just been reshuffled. The email came at 7:42 a.m., subject line, "Checking in, hope you're well." Classic HR passive aggression dressed in wellness jargon. "Hi Elizabeth, hope you're doing okay. Given the recent developments, we'd love to connect briefly and clarify a few things. Would you be available for a quick chat this week? Warm regards, Janine HR." A quick chat. As if all of this could be untangled over chamomile tea and a box of tissues. I read it twice, sipped my coffee, then dropped in the reply I'd already drafted over the weekend. "Hi Janine, at this time, please direct all future communication to my legal counsel. Best, Elizabeth Hart." No warmth. No opening, just surgical coldness and legal insulation. I hit send and felt nothing. Not fear, not satisfaction, just precision. A few hours later, Jordan forwarded me another message, this one with a city email header that read, "New Arden Ethics and Procurement Oversight Council." They wanted to speak, not as investigators, as collaborators. Subject, Policy consultation invitation, dear Ms. Hart. We're reaching out regarding your insight into current procurement workflows within municipal private infrastructure contracts. We understand you may have firsthand experience with the limitations of existing oversight systems. Would you be open to a brief exploratory call regarding temporary consultation during our revision process? I reread it twice. Not only was I being asked to help rewrite the very systems Damon tried to manipulate, I was being asked officially. Documented, respected. I forwarded it to Jordan, then stared at the screen for a minute. Then I smiled. Because this was how power really shifted. Not in slamming doors and shouting matches, but in calm, unshakable redirection. I hadn't just avoided the fall, I'd been asked to help rebuild the scaffolding. By noon, word began circulating through the company that Damon had been placed on administrative leave pending review. Not fired, not yet. They were still clinging to the illusion of due process, like a child insisting the monster in the closet needs a fair trial. But the board was already in motion. Ashley messaged me privately. Just one line, they're calling for a full audit. Like everything, not just NE117. I didn't reply. What was there to say? The audit was a formality now. The data trail had already collapsed like a rotted bridge, and Damon was standing in the debris holding a hammer and whistling off-key. Inside the company, Slack threads started dying out. People got quiet. The usual banter disappeared. Even the VP of Ops, who once liked a photo of Damon's dog dressed as a traffic cone, removed his profile picture. They were erasing proximity, burning digital bridges before the fire got to them. Meanwhile, the external pressure kept rising. An article appeared in a local watchdog blog titled, "Mavendale Missteps, Audit Activity Spikes Around Infrastructure Contract." It didn't name names, but it quoted section 12.409 directly. Someone in City Hall was leaking breadcrumbs, and every crumb pointed to one thing: a woman who didn't raise her voice, didn't file a lawsuit, didn't crash through the front door in a blaze of drama, just documented, just calculated, just refused to shut up when the system asked her to die quietly. The last message of the day came from Cheryl. Sent to legal, the board, and HR. Subject, timeline request please, compile all communications regarding the NE117 budget reallocation, including drafts of the severance agreement offered to Elizabeth Hart, and notes from all related HR conversations. City Ethics has requested full transparency ahead of their internal advisory onboarding. Translation, they weren't circling the wagons anymore. They were tearing them down for parts. I closed my laptop at 5:12 p.m., poured a glass of wine, and sat on my fire escape watching traffic crawl past the Mavendale Utilities building in the distance. Somewhere in there, Janine was probably panicking. Cheryl was fielding calls from people using words like exposure risk and personal culpability. The CFO was digging through old ledgers, praying he hadn't signed something he didn't understand. And Damon was sitting at home with his work phone buzzing like a hive of hornets, realizing that every frantic message he sent now made him look guiltier. He'd played chess with a woman he thought was a pawn, and now the board was flipping. Not from rage, not from revenge, but from the simple, steady hand of someone who had receipts. The check was still crisp, still folded exactly how Damon had handed it to me that Friday morning, like it was some generous parting gift and not a gag order printed on money. $5,000. Neat, impersonal. Machine signed, the ink hadn't even faded. It sat in a shadow box frame now, centered on the wall of my new office. The brass plate beneath it read, "Attempted silencing denied." I didn't hang it out of spite. I hung it because I earned that reminder. Not of what they tried to do to me, but of what I didn't let them do. 2 weeks after the internal fallout began, I was invited to City Hall for a discussion. I walked in through the back, escorted by someone from the ethics office who'd clearly read my entire file. They didn't ask what happened. They already knew. They just wanted to know how I'd handled it so cleanly, so quietly, so professionally lethal. That meeting turned into another, then a proposal, then a formal contract. 1 year renewable. Ethics procurement consultant. Scope of work, identify loopholes, recommend structural protections, assist in rewriting municipal vendor compliance policy to prevent abuse, silencing, or financial sleight of hand. I accepted. My title didn't come with fanfare. There was no press release, no LinkedIn brag, just a signature, a handshake, and a badge that let me into a building full of people who didn't underestimate me. Meanwhile, Mavendale scrambled to save face. The board issued a public statement about leadership realignment and operational review of all grant-backed initiatives. They tried to spin it like a fresh start, but no one was fooled. Internally, Cheryl's emails turned into subpoenas. The CFO disappeared on sabbatical. Janine started wearing flats and walking like her spine was collapsing under NDAs. And Damon's severance package, 6 figures and a 2-year non-compete, was quietly frozen, pending the outcome of a misconduct investigation. Last I heard, he'd lawyered up and was trying to convince a private water consulting firm to take him on in a strategy role. But word travels fast in municipal circles. No one wants to hire the guy whose bad decisions locked up half a city's grant flow. Not when every ethics office from here to Camden has my report on file. Funny thing about trying to bury people, you forget they might be seeds. The last Thursday of the month, I took the long way to my office. Coffee in hand, coat open, wind slicing through downtown like it had business of its own. I turned the corner and slowed my steps just enough to catch a glimpse of the building that used to hold my old life. Mavendale Utilities. Still gray, still proud, still pretending, but something was different. There, outside the front entrance, stood Damon, head down, cardboard box in arms, a tie stuffed into one corner. A plant sticking out the top, wilted. He didn't see me, but I saw him, that shuffling figure who once told me I had no leverage, no support, no chance. The man who smiled like he owned the rules, never realizing I'd already memorized the rulebook. I took a sip of my coffee and kept walking. Didn't stop, didn't wave, didn't speak, because justice doesn't always arrive with thunder and gavel cracks. Sometimes it shows up with calm paperwork, cold timing, and a clause you thought no one remembered. And sometimes the woman you tried to bury frames the check you offered to shut her up and hangs it in an office paid for by the people you pissed off. That's not revenge, that's compliance. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.